Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. I am happy that you're here. I want to talk to you about innovation and creativity, and let me give you a brief refresher. First of all, if you've listened to the show at all, you know that I believe that innovation is the sum of a few key elements. One, you have to be creative in order to be innovative. That's just how it is. 2, you need to be curious. 3, you need to have compassion because you need to see what's wrong in order to be able to create something and innovate to fix it. 4, collaboration. You have to know your strengths in order to really work on all of the things that need fixing and addressing. But sometimes your strengths are not other people's strengths, and that's a really important thing to remember. And 5, mindfulness. The more mindful we are, the easier it is for all of us to build those skills of awareness that will allow us to see that there's an issue, have compassion for it, get curious about how to solve it, get creative in the solving process, and find collaborators that will allow us to actually go from soup to nuts and get things done. That's what innovation is all about. So, again, if you listen to the show, you know that Mondays are my episodes about innovation and what it means. Tuesdays are about creativity. And today, I want to talk to you about what it means to lead creative groups. Now, here's the thing about that, about what I just said. There are different ways to look at creative groups. You might be leading a creative group. You might be leading a group of creatives. You might be leading a group that has creatives in it that don't know they're creatives. And you might be leading a group of a bunch of different people, all of whom can be creative if you give them the opportunity to do it. If you provide the chance, if you build a culture that will allow them to get creative and innovate. A lot of us walk around thinking we're not creative, and that's just not true. But we don't know how to activate that creativity muscle almost. And so we walk through our lives thinking, I'm not that creative. I don't have those kinds of ideas. I don't have thoughts about how to make things that weren't there before, because that's what creating is, right? That's the act of creativity, is to create something, to make something that was not there before. And a lot of us go through this process in our lives where we think we don't have any original ideas. 2 ways you can look at that. Yeah, there is nothing new under the sun, but also, and this is something I tell to every client I work with, if you don't tell your story, no one else will, because no one has your experience, no one has your belief systems, no one has your ability to tell a story. If you don't create it, someone else might. It won't have your stamp on it, but if you decided to innovate something, and if you wanted to build a radio way back when, you would have been in a race with a number of other people trying to do the same thing. We have the person who is credited with building a radio, but it's possible somebody else built one before that and didn't carry it through, didn't tell other people, didn't collaborate, didn't get other people involved in making that radio. So these are all things that we can start thinking about as people who I think are inherently creative. We all are that way. So how do you do it? Well, first of all, as I said earlier, it's not just, it's a bunch of creative people, let's go. There are different levels, different types. I lead and manage 2 specific groups of creatives. In addition to all of my private clients, I'm talking about my own responsibilities as a leader. The first group is the Philosopher's Tones, and that is a holiday caroling group made up of 10 very creative people. We just went through a devastating loss, and I have to honor that and say that we're currently reeling from the loss of our amazing friend and colleague, Petra Mayer, who died suddenly on November 13th. And I could talk about that ad nauseum. You know that because I've dedicated several episodes already to her passing. And I'm not going to do that today. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about what a leader's responsibilities are when they have a group of creatives they're leading. Now, I'm going to say it very honestly, creatives aren't known for their overly practical, responsible natures. There are some creatives who are very responsible and very practical, but oftentimes creatives, musicians, artists, dancers, sculptors, actors don't necessarily have the practical matters of creating top of mind. And when you're a leader of a group of creatives, my goodness, you have to have those practical matters top of mind. So in thinking about this episode and how I was going to address that, I wanted to talk about that very thing. As a leader and the manager of the Philosopher's Tones, I actually went through and delineated for the group their responsibilities and my responsibilities so that we knew who was responsible for what. That's one of the first things I advise you to do if you're leading a group of creatives is let them know what they're responsible for, but also figure out what you're responsible for and let them know that too. So, for example, I told them they needed to know the music, know the words, be able to blend as singers, do the dynamics, work together. They needed to have the appropriate costuming. They needed to have an interest in singing the music. That needed to be something that they were, that's the necessity. You need to be interested in singing the music or why bother? They needed to show up to rehearsals on time and ready to sing. They need to show up to gigs half an hour before, unless the client stipulates something different, in their costuming and ready to go. They need to know the singing versus breaks times. That's something that's really important. And they need to know how to interact with audience members and be entertaining. As I say to them, you're not just singing, you're not just standing up in a church and singing, you are there also to interact and entertain with whatever audience we have. So that's their role. My role as the leader and the manager is to support them in being able to do everything I said that they needed to do. So I didn't buy their costuming, for example, but I had to evaluate their costuming and make sure that it is appropriate as far as when we're in costume, we're Dickensian or Victorian carolers, so we wear very specific garb, as they call it. So I had to give them their parameters, write them out, and make sure that those, when they buy their costuming, that they satisfy the parameters that would allow them to be Dickensian. I also had to get them their music, not just the sheet music, but also audio files of their parts and the other people's parts, because my job as the leader is to make it as easy as possible for them to do their jobs. That's ultimately it, right? If I don't make it easy on them, they could quit, which would suck. Let's say that, because we all sound amazing together and I love singing with these people and it's good money during the holiday season. So I have to make sure that they have it as easy as possible to do their magic, right? Their magic is to be the creatives. My magic is to also be a creative, and it's to do the practical matters to make it easier for them, to support them. So as an example, I have their sheet music. I have recordings of the music themselves. I go over the way we're going to say things, song by song, bit by bit, word by word, so that they know and can then practice it that way, right? If I don't make that very clear on very practical matters and very practical terms, they'll do what they do, but it might not be what I want them to do. So to support them doing what I want them to do, I have to spell things out in a way that will be appropriate for them and facilitate them doing what they need to do. I also take on the responsibility of running the rehearsals, right? So it's not just me there singing, it's all of us, but somebody has to be the person who goes, okay, let's sing this song, let's practice that. And then I have to listen and evaluate and assess, are they doing things right? Are they doing things wrong? What needs to be improved? And I have to tell them in a way that doesn't make them feel like crap, right? If you tell a creative person, you suck, boy, you're going to really make it harder on yourself to get the best out of them. So it's also a communication thing. In order for us to collaborate well, I need to communicate with them in the most constructive way possible that will facilitate them doing their best work. I also want them to be curious about how they can sing better, how they can get more from their voices, get more from the emotion of the piece of music we're singing. All of these things are part of me leading them. So in addition to doing the deeper work of technique, blending and singing on pitch and singing together well and all of that, I also work with them on what the songs are supposed to be saying, what our roles are in performance and in singing this beautiful music that so many composers have spent decades on. Some of these pieces go back hundreds of years, and I want them to appreciate and know their stuff. And the thing is, they're professionals, so they, of course, know their stuff. They're great at what they do. There's no question. And yet, my job is to make sure, again, that I facilitate them doing it. I also take on all of the practical matters of contracting and negotiation and interfacing with agents and clients to make sure that all of that stuff is taken care of so that my singers can be creative, can do their amazing creative singing magic. But that means that I have to take on all of these practical things, which I, as a creative person, am also not the best at. But in order for me to feel like we've got everything under control, like I've got everything under control, I've developed systems and processes to make sure that all of the gigs are delineated, all of the practical details are delineated for every person, so that at any time, when they need to know where they need to be, at what time they need to be there, whether or not they have to be in costuming or in formal black, what music they need to know, all of that stuff is set up for them so that they don't have to worry about it. They can just go in and do their singing and wow our audiences, which is why we get more repeat gigs year after year after year than you can shake a stick at. People want us back because we are, if I say so myself, amazing. So there's all of this that you can look at and go, oh, all of this is part and parcel of being the leader. I make it so that they can do what they are best at. To be honest, I am not the best at doing the practical details. But this is one of those situations where someone has to. And if I'm going to manage this group and keep it going and growing, I need to. That's all there is. I need to make sure that they have everything they need in order to do the job. And the thing is, the other part of this is that after every gig, we have a debrief. We talk about what worked and what could have gone better and what we want to do differently next time to make the gigs even better. The thing about this group is that we are 10 people, but we never sing as 10 people. We sing as trios or quartets. And that means that they 3 people are working super hard to make themselves sound like a full tabernacle choir, right? So that's part of this, is that because they're so good, I want to be sure that they keep improving, and I want to guide them as best I can and support them as best I can to do just that. And it's a way for us to keep going, keep growing, and keep being the best Philosopher's Stones we can be, so that we keep getting holiday caroling gigs. We've worked the National Tree Lighting. We've worked Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. We've got some interesting private gigs that we do every year. There are lots and lots of different ways that we entertain. And this is seasonal, right? So next year we'll be doing the same thing. But again, and next year I'll be taking on new singers. So I'll be going through the process of teaching new people as we expand the culture of this group and getting them the sheet music and getting them everything they need. And so you can see, as I'm talking about this, that each time we go through this process, it's formalized just a little bit more, but it's formalized in order to, again, make it frictionless for the people coming in and keep it frictionless for the people who've been there since 2003, which is when we started this whole thing. So the top things are make sure that they have all of the resources they need to do the very best. Support them in their efforts. Make sure that they have systems and processes in place to do what they need to do. And when you expand, keep lifting and supporting everyone up so that they can do their very best. And the new people who come in as you expand, make it bigger and better, and keep it as frictionless as possible so that everyone can slide into their roles in a way that feels substantive, good, and incredibly creative. That's just one group. The other group that I lead in and sort of manage is the Vegan Writers of New York City group. we're relatively small. There are 50 some odd people, and only about 7 or 8 are constant attendees of our biweekly meetings. And the reason I started this group is, frankly, I wanted to improve my writing, because, being a creative means you embark on a lifelong effort to improve. And there's always going to be another way to say something. There's always going to be perhaps a better way to say it. You keep editing until you're done. And in order to be inspired to write, personally, I like having the opportunity to talk about writing with other people, discuss it, get into the nitty and the gritty of it, and see what's there, what I can do, how I can improve as a writer, but also as a leader. And this group is a little bit more democratic, I guess, in that we've never formalized, as old as a leader, but I started the group and I call for the meetings and I run the writing exercises. And my job, as far as this group goes, is to, again, help the members grow as much as possible while keeping it frictionless. So little things like, this is when the meeting's going to happen, this is what we're going to be doing, this is, blah, 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 when and where, all of those details are there. And I also run a writing exercise every time to get us in that writing mode. So keeping resources, keeping fresh ideas in any creative group that you're managing and leading is really important. But again, make it frictionless. So over time, over the last few months that this group has been active, what I have tried to do is to make it fun and exciting, and also keep everybody engaged and learning, right? If they're curious about their own processes as writers, they're going to show up. If they're excited about what the possibilities are, they're going to show up. And in fact, I just had this, what I consider to be a great idea. One of the exercises that we do every time we meet is we write a 10-minute story. We choose prompt words out of a set of cards that I have that I use in workshops and with my clients to spark their imagination, to spark their creativity and ideas. So we choose a location, an object, and a profession out of a bunch of cards. And then we have 10 minutes to write a story incorporating the location, the object, and the profession. And so my idea, that is a phenomenal exercise. I highly recommend it. If you're at all interested in writing stories or telling stories, this is a great way to unleash and unlock your imagination and your inner creative, inner writer. And the brilliant idea that came to me today was, why don't we put all of these stories that we're writing over the next year, that we're going to write over the next year, say, and release a compilation of these stories. They're these 10-minute stories based on prompt words, and they're all different. We all use the same 3 prompt words every time, but because we're all unique, creative individuals, the stories are never similar. Even though the prompt words are the same, the stories are always different, and they are always super fun. So it's a way, again, for me to help them keep getting curious, keep being interested, keep writing, keep telling stories, and it lets them explore their own creativity. And as much as possible, again, this isn't a paid gig. I'm doing this for the love of the game and because I want to keep improving as a writer. But it's so important to notice that similar things happen, whether or not you're doing it as a professional leader or business owner, or you're doing it to facilitate a writer's group. The same principles apply. Provide the resources, keep it engaging and exciting, support them in doing their work, and make it as frictionless as possible for them to be their very best selves. And so let's take it back into the business world, to innovation. Here's the thing that makes me go, And what it is what if you're leading a group of people who don't know they're creative? How do you get them to understand that they have creative genius inside them, that nobody knows their job better than they do? And yet, how do you get them excited about the work? It's a really interesting moment to stop this episode, because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that notion of building a culture that will support creative thinking, and I'm going to put it into the next episode. And please note, it will be both. When you're leading a group of creatives that you know are creative, who know they're creative, and when you're leading a group of people, some of whom probably know they're creative and have those amazing imaginations and incredible ideas and want to work on them, and people who absolutely have no idea that they're creative, have not exercised those muscles and probably need to, because it would be helpful both to the company or organization and to them, because it unleashes your imagination, it inspires you, and it motivates you to do things differently, to try things, and to really see where you can take it. So come back next week and we're going to talk about the business aspect of leading and managing groups of creatives, whether or not they understand and acknowledge that they're creative individuals, or they have no idea, and it's part of your job to inspire, engage, and excite them to explore their own unique creative genius. I'm Isolde Trachtenberg, and as always, remember, to innovate, you have to be bold, be creative, and be kind.